I'm Anthony Cassar, and I'm a man who lives by gratitude, character, and faith.
So Anthony, so a big part of our program is character. Has there been anyone in your past, a mentor or a coach, who's affected your character?
I would say the two biggest are my father and my grandfather. Growing up, they both exemplified and taught me the value of hard work, excellency, and throughout all your life, and then obviously faith.
Right.
And those three characteristics are what I modeled because I love them so much, and that's what helped me really achieve some success in different areas of life.
Right. Well, how do you think that's affected your performance? Like their ideas of character came to you and then threw you into your performance. How do you think that manifested?
Yeah, I mean, with hard work and having a faithful purpose, and then focusing on excellence in all areas of life, you can be pretty successful and keep a good perspective. So that's what I translated into wrestling and fighting, and it's kept me grounded, but also given me the tools to achieve some success.
Right. Talk about your faithful purpose. Can you unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah, my faithful purpose is like a greater perspective. So that's my main goal in life, is to grow closer to God and love and serve Him. So if I can do that and glorify Him through what I'm pursuing in life, then that's where I combine both, and I feel like at peace in my life.
That's outstanding. Outstanding. So how about from PSU wrestling, from Penn State wrestling, has there been anyone there, a teammate who's like their character, like you've admired and kind of like, hey, I want to be a little bit more like that?
Yeah, I would actually say Coach Casey Cunningham. When I went away to college, I was the first one in my family to do so, and I didn't have those role models anymore, my dad and my grandpa. And Coach Casey was a similar example to that, and exemplified the similar characteristics that I looked for in a man. And so he really helped me kind of stay focused and not lose my values.
All right, that's great. That's great. And so what drew you to Penn State?
Yeah.
What pulled you to, why Penn State?
Well, first of all, I knew I had a lot of catching up to do in wrestling, and they were the number one team at the time, so I was like, I need to be there. And second, once I visited it with my dad, and we met the coaches, and we got a sense of their perspective and what they're about, it was a no-brainer. Like I said, no one in my family went away to college. My dad wanted to keep it a small circle and keep those values. But once we both interacted with them, we knew it was a similar environment. So
how would you describe the identity of Penn State wrestling?
The identity of Penn State wrestling is just a group of good people that love wrestling and have fun doing it.
Right.
But overall, I think we all have a greater purpose, and that gives us like the freedom to be who we are. So people always ask like what the secret is. It's kind of hard to, there's no individual secret. It's just that whole perspective of life helps a lot. And then we love wrestling, so it makes it easy.
Right. That was a common theme as Max came in here, Nick or Morgan McIntosh. Like Morgan said, you can spot a Penn State wrestler because he wrestles with a lot of joy. He just loves to do it, and he's trying to score a lot of points.
Yeah.
I like that idea. Like a lot of times it's like everything becomes real pressure filled.
Yeah.
Right. And now you found a way to find enjoyment in it. I mean, that's kind of really different, especially for kids, because everything's super stressful, right?
Yeah.
I got to perform, and now it's about going and having fun.
Yeah, and it's tough to do that if that's all you're focused on. If wrestling's everything, then you're gonna like tense up and not try to score a lot of points and like just squeak out a win, because if you lose, it's end of the world.
Right.
So I think that is what frees us up, is that perspective on what wrestling is to us, and why we love it and why we do it. It frees us up to just go out there and score as many points as possible, because win or lose, we're just giving our best and leaving the rest up to God. So
that's great. So what? Take me. Well, first of all, I'll pause. I'll come back. So, what from all those lessons have you brought into your MMA career?
All of them.
Oh,
yeah,
that's it. Everything.
Yeah. I mean,
let's go.
Yeah, my life, my training, the way I train, the way I recover, the way I approach the sport, the way I think about it, is all from Penn State. So it's a blessing that I'm able to still train at Penn State and be in the room every day and surrounded by all those guys with all those great values, because when I do my MMA training, I approach the exact same way. And why change it if it ain't broke? So.
Right. But it's interesting, like, because we talked about this for firefighters, even the biggest fire departments, you spend this much of your life fighting the fire, and the rest of it's away from it.
Yeah.
Right. So really, it's interesting because you look at yourself as a fighter, but realistically, you're like the actual fight is just this blip,
Yeah.
and the rest of it's away. Can you speak to that? Like, what are you trying to accomplish away from the octagon?
I think that's maybe the most important time, when a lot of people, everyone works hard generally in the gym and is doing similar things, but how are you spending your time outside of the gym? And for me, it's all about self-improvement, mind, body, and spirit. I'm trying to go closer to God. I'm watching film. I'm studying. I'm eating correctly, sleeping right. So it's just about dialing in all the details for me outside of the room and making sure I'm progressing as an individual.
Right. That's great. So a couple more questions. So take me back. Is there any stories that for you are formative? Like I look back, like that's these couple things you can point out. That's what helped me make me Anthony Cassar.
Yeah. I think I have one for each like section of my career, like middle school, high school, college. But the one that's happened recently, just a few years ago, was the last injury I sustained at the senior nationals, qualifying for the Olympic trials, and had a good path to making that Olympic team and achieving my goal. But hurt my shoulder and was forced out of the tournament. And that, being at the lowest of lows, and then reaching the mountaintop, becoming a state champ, national champ, and then going on to the next goal and being knocked right down to the bottom, it was like the final straw of just giving up my control.
Right.
Trusting God, being able to surrender to Him, because even though I was saying God was first in my life, I was still really holding on tight to what I wanted to do, and like really forcing my own will and not always putting Him first, and not trusting Him. And that last time really was like God's final message to me, like, all right, I'm still gonna make big goals, and I'm gonna do everything I can to achieve them, but at the same time, I need to keep that, what I preach, that greater perspective of, no, He's first, and good or bad, it's all for the betterment of me and for my life.
Right. So there's two big things we have in our program. It's not what you look at, it's what you see. So I can see this thing as I got knocked down, or I can see this as a way to make me better.
Yeah.
And those things where you have to push through, rejoice in your suffering. We were just talking about
exactly.
that. Like, well, I'm rejoicing all the time. I'm like, wow, sometimes this is really, it's a tough go, but it's not. This is all for me to make me tougher.
Yeah.
And it's a way to build resilience. And maybe take stock of what I do have. Like really the wrestling is, like you said, it's this thing you do, but it's really away from it.
Yeah.
And those relationships, your wife, your fiance, and like what's important, your relationship to God and your relationship to your community. And the other thing we talk about is, I can't change the world. I can only change my relationship to it. Right? I can't change what's going to happen. Hey, sometimes I'm going to get hurt. Yeah. Sometimes, a good friend of ours, mutual friend Dan Mayo, talks about, wrestling. Sometimes you wrestle a guy and that's just not your day. Yeah. Whatever, right? Whatever you're bringing, you just got to be okay with it to move on and like not let that define you. Yep. Right.
For sure.
So how would you, if you look at all the things you've learned, like what would you want to go back to the old you and be like, hey, little Tony, what's going on here? Here's a piece of advice for you, or for any kid. Yeah. Like, what would you come back for a piece of advice for yourself?
I would say, just trusting that greater process. Like you said, like rejoicing in your suffering, the good and the bad. It's all leading you to the person you're meant to become. Right. And just taking a step back and, not relinquishing responsibility or the pursuit of your goals, but just being in this world but not of it, kind of thing. Like just keeping that greater perspective of, okay, things might not go right all the time, but I know it's for my betterment, and as long as I seek the lesson and advantage in it, then it's a blessing.
Right. I'm not in this world, but I'm not in this world but of it. I'm the other way.
Yeah. In this world, but not of it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's great. So you got to be intentional, right? You just can't walk around looking at your TikToks and all your social media. You got to be focused on what's going on, right? That's really key. So for our program, we have gratitude, character, and faith, and a way to build this connected community that leads you to this idea we call greater spiritual resilience. Why do you think that's important for kids?
I think it's important because life's like really hard without it. Like when you're focused on the next thing in front of you, like a lot of the times it's not fun, and like you don't have something to fall back on. Right. So if you have spiritual resilience and these pillars of character and gratitude and faith. Like, these are things that can sustain you throughout life. Like, life's hard enough, so these things really provide you with meaning and stuff to fall back on when times are good and bad.
Right. Anthony Cassar, thanks for being a road warrior. Thanks for being on the road. We really appreciate it.
Of course. I love the program, so thanks for everything you're doing.
There you go.